Decisions made in Washington can affect your portfolio every day. But what policy changes should investors be watching? Washington Wise is an original podcast from Charles Schwab that unpacks the stories making news in Washington right now and how they may affect your finances and portfolio. Listen at schwab.com/WashingtonWise. Decisions made in Washington can affect your portfolio every day. But what policy changes should investors be watching? Washington Wise is an original podcast from Charles Schwab that unpacks the stories making news in Washington right now and how they may affect your finances and portfolio. Listen at schwab.com/WashingtonWise. Hey, Congressman, how you doing?
Good. Hello, Mary.
When I got Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin on the line yesterday, I gotta say, he sounded a lot more chipper than I expected. We last talked back in November, right after President Trump's election. Like a lot of Dems, he was in what the hell just happened mode. He said he was reading a lot of history. Raskin represents the D.C. suburbs, which means since we last spoke, a whole lot of his constituents have been doged out of work, and now they're feeling the National Guard surge firsthand. Do you feel like your job has been easier or harder than you expected it to be when we last spoke?
Oh, we're in the fight of our lives. I represent 55,000 federal workers, and thousands of them have been sacked, fired, dismissed without any cause, without any due process. The immigrant community is under attack. The LGBTQ community is under attack. The colleges, the universities, the CDC, NIH, you name it.
Do you feel like you have the power to help them?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no, but we're always there to express solidarity. I mean, the toughest is in the immigration field where, we're now up against masked officers in unmarked cars conducting warrantless arrests with billions of dollars behind them. There's really no difference anymore for us between so-called constituent work and work on Capitol Hill.
What do you mean when you say that?
Well, I just mean we're just trying to defend the rule of law.
As a Democrat, defending the rule of law puts Raskin in a tough spot. But Congress has got a tiny bit of leverage. Theoretically, it holds the federal government's purse strings, which has led some people to propose something radical. When a spending deadline hits at the end of the month, they say Democrats should be unafraid to shut the government down. I wanted to know what the congressman thought about all that. Republicans need Democratic votes to keep the government open. So I got to ask you, do you have a plan here?
The Republicans control the House, the Senate, the White House. They have the power to keep the government going. If the government shuts down, that's on them. So if they need us, great. Then let's do that old-fashioned thing called legislation and compromise. And we are willing to work with them to come up with a budget that serves the needs of the American people and also prevents the evisceration of the rights and freedoms of the people and the legitimate powers of Congress. And if they're willing to play ball on all that stuff, we can bail them out. But the bottom line is the burden's on them to get the budget done because they control every branch of the government.
Today on the show, a Democratic congressman weighs a looming government shutdown. I'm Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around.
The spirit of innovation is deeply ingrained in America, and Google is helping Americans innovate in ways both big and small. From improving emergency response times to protecting against cyber attacks, local, state, and federal governments are innovating with Google AI. This is a new era of American innovation. Find out more at g.co/American innovation.
This episode is brought to you by Saks Fifth Avenue. With the weather getting cooler, if you're like me, you're looking around for a couple of new items for your wardrobe, like a new sweater, some cute new kicks. And Saks Fifth Avenue makes it easy to get creative with your personal style and find the best arrivals for fall. I went over to Saks.com to check out what they've got on tap. And I gotta say, what I love about clicking around their website is that every piece looks special, one of a kind, as if you'd walk into the office or a party and instantly grab everyone's attention. All the big brands are there, stuff like Alice and Olivia, the young and trendy stuff. I love that I can see the care in every piece Saks has chosen for their fall collections. Each dress or pant or shoe feels a little bit elevated. So if you want shopping to be fun and easy, head over to Saks Fifth Avenue for inspiring ways to elevate your personal style every day. Over the weekend, I'm sure you saw the New York Times, Ezra Klein wrote this op-ed basically arguing that the Democrats should not help fund the government because it would be giving tacit approval to an autocratic takeover that's happening right now by Donald Trump. Do you agree with that?
Well, I agree that we should not be funding authoritarianism. I agree with that 1,000%. We have more than 200 preliminary injunctions and temporary restraining orders that have been issued against this reign of lawlessness and terror across the country. So if we can build protections into the budget for just the basic American constitutional design and for the rights and freedoms of the people, and then we can come up with reasonable budget compromises, then by all means we should do it. But if we can't do that because they are too much under the spell of Donald Trump and in the clutches of MAGA authoritarianism, then there's no way that we should continue to fund the dismantling of everything prior generations of Americans have built.
I think the challenge for people in your position is to compromise without feeling compromised at the end of it. Like the last time there was a decision like this back in March about spending, Democrats in the House, like yourself, held firm against funding the government. But when legislation reached the Senate, Chuck Schumer pretty quickly said, we got to just fund the government. And all of a sudden we did. Can you talk to me about the difficulty of having those conversations between the houses and what the concerns are about shutting down the government in this moment?
Well, traditionally, the concern about shutting down the government is it's an enormously profligate and wasteful thing to do. It hurts our constituents, both the people who depend on government, whether we're talking about, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, national parks, NIH, what have you. And it also hurts the people who are in the federal government, who are making the government go. So, we're a party that believes the government is an instrument of the common good and the public interest. But that seems woefully obsolete in the days of Donald Trump. The government has become a weapon against his political enemies and a way to attack communities across the country and undermine the public good. So I think Ezra Klein was right to say, figure out exactly what you're going to be funded.
What do you see as the major issues you should be negotiating over? Because I've read, for instance, that Democrats are beginning to think they should negotiate over things like heading off the expiration of enhanced healthcare insurance subsidies. These are ACA subsidies that Democrats put into place, and they're going to lapse. And a lot of people are going to see insurance premiums skyrocket, which is bad. But then I've also seen the argument that, okay, let's say Democrats fund the government and get, they're able to head off the expiration of these health insurance subsidies. That's kind of giving the GOP two gifts. There's the funding of the government, and then there's the fact that they don't have to experience the pain of the policies that they've put into place. So why would you negotiate in that way?
Well, we're here to try to help the American people get through this nightmare. So we do not view the imposition or dissemination of pain as a good strategy for getting us through mega authoritarianism. We want to try to defend our communities, our families, our people as much as we can.
But what if you can't? There's so much pain being dispersed right now in this country. What if that actually is something you can't do?
Yeah. Well, if it's something that we can't do, then we have to figure out other ways as the party of the people to get to meet people's needs and to help people get through this nightmare. And we will do that. But, I don't want anybody to forget that the imposition of authoritarian rule creates thousands of ethical, moral, and existential dilemmas every day for people. And you're just identifying one of them. Do you try to make things a little bit better, but perpetuate their general authoritarian direction and crackdown? Or do we pull the plug on it and say, we'll try to stick together and get our people through it? I mean, these are all, terrible, the tactical, ethical, moral, political, existential dilemmas that we're dealing with. But we are up to the task, and the vast majority of the American people support vaccines. The vast majority of the American people support public health. The vast majority of the American people support voting rights and the integrity of our elections, and support Medicaid and healthcare. So we're going to do everything in our power to defend those. And if that means keeping the government open and that works, we'll do it. And if it means letting them shut the government down because they're so unreasonable and deranged in their policies and their work, then we will let that happen. But we will always be fighting for the interests of the people.
I'm curious about, I hear your language, which I think is really interesting, where you're putting the shutdown on the Republicans. You're saying letting them shut the government down. What is the hesitation to say, we need to shut the government down because this isn't working? I can't negotiate in good faith when Republicans are clawing back funding we've agreed to. How do I have a budget negotiation when those sorts of things are happening?
Right. Well, I'm just stating as a matter of fact, they've got the gavels in the House. They've got the gavels in the Senate. They control the White House and the executive branch, and they control the Supreme Court. So they've got the power to keep the government going without us. Again, if they want us to keep the government going that they control, they've got to stop doing what they're doing, which is using the government as an instrument of authoritarian oppression against our people.
More with Congressman Jamie Raskin after a quick break.
Your sausage McMuffin with egg didn't change. Your receipt did. The sausage McMuffin with egg extra value meal includes a hash brown and a small coffee for just $5. Only at McDonald's for a limited time.
Prices and participation may vary.
Comcast is committed to bringing access to the internet to all Americans, including rural communities across the country, like Sussex County, Delaware.
We were being left behind. Everybody around us seemed to have internet, but we did not. High-speed internet is one of those good things that we needed to help us move our farming, our small businesses, our recreation forward.
Learn more about how we're bringing our next-generation network to more people across the country at ComcastCorporation.com/investment in America.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
I wonder if we can talk a little bit about troop deployments in the National Guard. Over the weekend, the president's social media accounts posted this meme that riffed on the movie Apocalypse Now. It was just very strange. It basically came off as declaring war on the city of Chicago. It said, "I love the smell of deportations in the morning." There was a lot going on here. What do you feel like congressional Democrats can do in this moment to support cities like Chicago that are feeling under threat right now?
We've got to be involved at every level in rejecting the militarization of our society and the militarization of law enforcement and the federalization of local government functions. So start with D.C. We've been extremely outspoken and active in rejecting what Trump and his administration have been doing in Washington, D.C. We called attention to the fact that he had no power to take over the Metropolitan Police Department. He had the power only to demand that the mayor give the president the police presence needed to meet a particular federal crisis or function. What might that be? Well, perhaps a paradigm example of a federal crisis would be a violent insurrection against the Congress. That's precisely a place where Donald Trump did not ask for Metropolitan Police Department help, and he also did not activate the National Guard in D.C., which is directly under his control. So this obviously has nothing to do with a real crisis. He couldn't even name what the crisis was. He was talking about graffiti and the blight of homelessness in D.C. So along with Eleanor Holmes Norton, who's the delegate from the District of Columbia, I introduced legislation to nullify and negate the so-called emergency because it never existed, and also to deny them the power to run the Metropolitan Police Department. They basically accepted the interpretation that they did not have the power to take over the police department, but they still brought in National Guard. They activated the DC National Guard, which is tiny, but then they brought in National Guard from some other states. But again, they basically didn't have anything to do. We have been standing up for the cities across the country along the lines of Judge Breyer's decision in San Francisco, where he said, we don't use the Army and the National Guard and the Marines for law enforcement purposes. That just cuts against a cardinal principle of our country that goes back centuries to the Posse Comitatus Act.
The federalization in D.C., I believe it's 30 days. What do you think will happen if that time lapses and the federal government doesn't cede control?
Well, the good thing for people who believe in democracy and local self-government is these people have no attention span. So they've already gotten bored with D.C. They're already trying to take credit for the actual work that's been done by the mayor and the council and the police department and the people of D.C. over the last several years, and saying there are dramatic reductions in crime, which is precisely what all of the local political leadership was saying when this started.
You're saying the good news is they're going to get bored?
Yeah, the good news is they have no real interest in D.C., right? I mean, they pretend to have interest in a place for the purposes of a photo opportunity. What is all this really about? It is to declare that immigrants and criminals and big city mayors and Democrats are the enemy, and then to try to set the stage for federal intervention and federal troops across the country during the November elections next year. It's so obvious.
Yeah. I mean, throughout this conversation, I'm struck by how hard your job is in this moment, and that you are so knowledgeable about how the U.S. government works. You taught constitutional law at American University, I believe, before going to Congress. And yet the levers that you know are there don't seem to be working the way that they were envisioned to work. I was listening to your colleague over in the Senate, Chris Coons, do an interview where he basically told NPR, he was staring down this funding deadline that we were talking about earlier. He basically said, I feel like in the Senate and Congress, we're at the risk of becoming hood ornaments on democracy right now. And we're trying to figure out ways not to do that. Do you have moments like that as well?
Well, there's no doubt that the Trump administration is seeking something like Madison's definition of tyranny, which is the collapse of all powers into one, so that the executive power usurps the lawmaking power, the executive power usurps the judicial review power of the courts, it takes over all the powers of the agencies, and it tries to preempt and usurp the people. So yes, that is what we are up against. However, we are the descendants of generations of great revolutionary democratic patriots who won't take that. And so I think a lot about people like Frederick Douglass and Tom Paine. Paine wrote that beautiful pamphlet, The American Crisis, in 1776, when people didn't know which way the revolution was going to go. And half the people are saying, you can't beat the empire. You can't beat the greatest empire that ever existed. You can't beat kings and queens and lords. And half of the people are saying, let's give it a try. Let's try to put government on the principle of freedom and liberty and democratic self-government. And he wrote The American Crisis, and he said, these are the times that try men, and we add women's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will shrink at this moment from the service of their cause and their country, but everyone that stands with us now will win the love and the favor and the affection of every man and every woman for all time. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered, but we have this saving consolation. The more difficult the struggle, the more glorious in the end will be our victory.
Do you have that memorized?
I know most Paine by heart. Yes, indeed. And these are the people I keep close to my heart.
Do we have a communicator like that now? Because I'm struck by the lack of communicators who can communicate in the language of today about the moment that we're at. I mean, you're a Democrat. You know this. You know the fact that Democrats as a party are suffering from their lowest approval rate in a long, long time. And it concerns me in this moment. Like, who is communicating that now?
Well, look, I think all of us are. I mean, all of us need to rise to the occasion and be leaders at this moment and activists and citizens. I just got back from New York's 21st district, Elise Stefanik's district. I was up in the Adirondacks with a wonderful new congressional candidate there, Blake Gendabine, who's a dairy farmer. And I spent 2 days campaigning with him up in the North Country. And people were very excited that, a member of Congress who doesn't live up there came up there to talk to them about Abraham Lincoln and Tom Paine and Benjamin Franklin and Frederick Douglass and our history. But we've got to use every mechanism available to us. And some of it's online and some of it is, Facebook and X and TikTok and some of it's emails. But a lot of it has got to be old-fashioned in-person organizing and speaking. And people are sometimes surprised when I start launching into long quotations of our revolutionary forebears and the democratic patriots who brought us to where we are. But we need to do that. And people need to understand that democracy's always been the exception. For the vast majority of human history, people have lived under tyrants and autocrats and dictators like Vladimir Putin and Viktor Orban and Donald Trump. That's been the fate of humanity. And so democracy in America, democracy is the exception, but you got to fight for it. And in these times, we got to fight for it every single day.
Yeah. I mean, people definitely want to see the fight. When I think about what comes next in Congress and for the Democrats, when I think about this idea of shutting down the government, whoever you want to say would be responsible for that decision, I think the challenge for Democrats is that you got to say what you're doing with your full chest. You got to say, we're making this decision to sit on our hands or whatever, because it's the right thing and here's why. And I sense hesitation about that in this moment from the party at large, not from you, but that's what I sense.
Well, obviously there's a million tactical decisions that go into this fight. To save, preserve, and expand our democracy. And I don't think at this point anybody should doubt any Democrat's commitment to get us through this nightmare. And so, I know people want to see the fight, and I tell everybody, good, I'm glad you want to see the fight, but you should also be the fight, because this is not just a crackdown on Congress. This is a crackdown on colleges and universities and law firms and cities and towns and counties and libraries and minority communities and so on. So we need people fighting everywhere, and we're all in this together. So at a certain point, I think, look, the reason why the Democrats are so low in the polls is because we lost the last election and people are bummed about that. I'm bummed about that. And people want to see us fighting. But I think we're going to shake that off quickly and everybody's going to understand we're in this thing together. You're either on the side of freedom and democracy or you're on the side of Donald Trump and MAGA authoritarianism.
Representative Raskin, I'm really grateful for your time. Thanks for coming on the show.
And thanks for having me.
Jamie Raskin is a congressman representing Maryland's 8th congressional district. If you're a fan of what we're doing here at What Next, the very best thing you can do to support us is to sign up for Slate Plus. That is our membership program that makes it possible for us to continue producing interviews like this one with Representative Raskin. And you get access to Slate Plus exclusive episodes across all of our shows. Our sister show, What Next TBD, just did a great Plus episode on the Google antitrust trial. You can find it if you scroll back in your feed far enough. So, did Google actually win? Find out by signing up for Slate Plus at slate.com/whatnextplus. All right, that's our show. What Next is produced by Paige Osburn, Elena Schwartz, Rob Gunther, Anna Phillips, and Madeline Ducharme. Mia Lobel is the head of audio here at Slate. Ben Richmond is the senior director of podcast operations. And I'm Mary Harris. Go track me down on Blue Sky. I'm at Mary Harris. Thanks for listening. Catch you back here next time. This episode is brought to you by Saks Fifth Avenue. With the weather getting cooler, if you're like me, you're looking around for a couple of new items for your wardrobe, like a new sweater, some cute new kicks. And Saks Fifth Avenue makes it easy to get creative with your personal style and find the best arrivals for fall. I went over to Saks.com to check out what they've got on tap, and I gotta say, what I love about clicking around their website is that every piece looks special, one of a kind, as if you'd walk into the office or a party and instantly grab everyone's attention. All the big brands are there, stuff like Alice and Olivia, you know, the young and trendy stuff. I love that I can see the care in every piece Saks has chosen for their fall collections. Each dress or pant or shoe feels a little bit elevated. So if you want shopping to be fun and easy, head over to Saks Fifth Avenue for inspiring ways to elevate your personal style every day.